And welcome back. End Rape on Campus. It's an initiative working to end campus sexual violence through support, education, and policy reform, centering historically excluded and systemically marginalized student survivors. Joining me now and sharing more is the executive director of End Rape on Campus, Kenyora Lenair Parham. And we thank Kenyora for joining us now. And Kenyora, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Talk to me a little bit about this, because when we talk about rape on campus, very prevalent in a lot of communities. But what are we seeing by way of numbers? Are we seeing things on the increase? Are we seeing things on the decrease? Where are we?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, campus sexual assault is a public health crisis. And the numbers we know to be are very staggering, especially for historically underserved, marginalized students, particularly in the United States. When we think of the statistics amongst men, women, and those of the transgender and gender nonconforming communities, the numbers are staggering. 26% of women, 6% of men, and 23% of transgender nonconforming students experience campus sexual violence. And then we think about the racial breakdown of this issue. Indigenous women make up about 25%. Latina women are about 23%. Multiracial women make up 22%. Pacific Islander women are around 21%. And Black women and Asian women make up about 18 and 12%, respectively. And then when we think about students who identify within the LGBTQ communities, they face higher rates of discrimination, verbal and physical assault, and bullying. And then also when we think about students who have disabilities or are neurodivergent, they experience nearly 2 times the rate of students without disabilities. And even currently, we know that about 40% of survivors who report violence or harassment to their schools are pushed out of education. They're experiencing a number of different educational relation financial declines that also includes academic performance, loss in their financial aid or scholarships that they receive, some of which are also, experiencing academic probation. And then when we talk about the long-term effects, we're also talking about their future employment and graduate school opportunities are also on a decline. And then when we think about the mental health and psychological outcomes of these students who have experienced campus sexual assault, they're dealing with things such as PTSD, depression, anxiety, substance use disorders, and suicidal ideation and attempts.
Yeah.
And so here, what we're trying to do at NRAPE on Campus is to provide that support for survivors in their communities, regardless of or with respect to their identities.
I want to take a moment and, you throw out a lot of numbers there, and they're very staggering, and at the same time, cause for concern. But there's another number that I'm not hearing that I know that you know about, which is the underreported. And there's so many people who do go in this underreported category or unreported category. What can you tell us about unreporteds? Because as you say, there's so many challenges sometimes to even come forth and talk about being sexually assaulted, being raped, being violated, that many people choose to remain silent.
Many people choose to remain silent due to a number of various factors, including cultural barriers, systemic and structural barriers that also prevent them from coming forward. In particular, when we think about Black women, for every one Black woman who reports, 15 do not. And a lot of that deals with the cultural barriers that we've experienced as young children, as well as the structural and systemic barriers that we're dealing with when we're at college. And, the reporting mechanisms that students of color and students who are coming from historically marginalized spaces and communities are often, left in the shadows and not acknowledged, especially when they're going through that reporting structure that is often set up with a number of different barriers to prevent them from even coming forward. Or sometimes we even think about students who are protecting folks within their own communities when they've experienced sexual assault from someone within their own groups. And so there's a number of different reasons as to which historically marginalized student survivors essentially do not come forward. And a lot of what I spoke to also with regard to those financial and academic barriers that I mentioned earlier.
Your job is the executive director of End Rape on Campus. Talk to us about the work that's being done on campuses, really to have these forums addressing awareness. Share with us.
Sure. So, as you had mentioned at the top of the call, our mission works to end campus sexual violence through support for survivors, education, and policy reform. Particularly when we talk about support, we offer support to student survivors in their communities by connecting them with support networks, including connecting them with mental health professionals or attorneys as they need it, and of course, empowering these students as activists on their respective campuses to drive campus change. And then when we think about that second pillar of education, we take a lead in providing training and developing resources for staff, students, groups, and individuals who are essentially looking to figure out what's their role in making that necessary change to combat sexual violence and prevent it from happening. And then, with respect to the last pillar of policy reform, we advocate for fair and equitable sexual assault and interpersonal violence policies and legislation at all levels, from the campus, local, state, and federal levels, really striving to create that environment that promotes accountability and justice. And we do that through our Centering the Margins framework, which really focuses on providing culturally relevant support for students who are coming from those historically marginalized backgrounds, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Tish, when we talk about campuses themselves and really dealing with sexual abuse, sexual assault, it's a really tough topic, and it's a reality, I should say, too. Uh, when you're dealing with administrations, do you feel as though becoming more receptive, adaptive to what you're dealing with and the awareness plight?
So essentially, when we think about the number of colleges and students that we are engaged with, one of the things that we began to develop actually was this campus accountability mapping tool. We actually try to employ all of the community members to really be involved with what it looks like to holding schools accountable and creating transparency mechanisms, by actually helping us build that mapping tool. And essentially, the mapping tool, which we launched earlier in January, is this digital resource that empowers current and prospective students to compare more than 1,000 colleges and universities across the country. So we even have schools in the Bronx, like Bronx Community College, College of Mount St. Vincent, Hostos Community College, and Lehman College. For us, the mapping tool is the first of its kind interactive tool that really allows students to easily access and compare sexual assault statistics, prevention efforts, and survivor support resources between colleges and universities across the states. So, with this information, we feel that students are armed with the necessary information to help them make informed decisions when they're thinking about what's going on in their campus, or if they're a prospective student who's looking for that next step in their life with respect to attending college or a university after high school.
When we talk about policy reform and advocacy, I know that's at the forefront of your work too. Talk to us about some of the policies that you're really looking to uh, bring attention to and what the public should know.
Absolutely. So, Iraq, we've been actively involved in policy reform efforts at multiple levels of government. Our work really is inclusive of helping students file Title IX complaints, assisting them with respect to legal assistance and connecting them to attorneys, and of course, developing and contributing to the development of legislation in on the state and on the federal levels. And one of our key focuses has been advocating for a Title IX policy that prioritizes the protection of student survivors. Together with a coalition of other student survivor advocates and gender justice organizations, we've urged the current Biden administration to fulfill its commitment to reversing changes made under the Title IX rules under the former administration. And so we've called for the issuance of even a new regulation to support survivors with a deadline that's actually set for this month. And we've highlighted 4 critical areas that we believe would really help to improve Title IX and really make it safer for those students. And that includes having clear designation of confidential resources and mandated reporting and who exactly serves in that capacity, having defined investigation timelines with specific benchmarks, implementing a formal application process for schools that desire to claim religious exemptions. And then finally, the adoption of the preponderance of evidence standard as the burden of proof for all campuses. And we've also endorsed and supported various bills aimed at enhancing campus safety and protecting survivors. These include 2 bills, particularly named the Student Access to Freedom and Educational Rights Act, or the SAFER Act, which safeguards students' access to education free from discrimination. And then another bill I want to highlight is CASA, also known as the Campus Accountability and Safety Act of 2022, which is really designed to incentivize schools to proactively protect students. So all in all, we're really engaged in policy reform efforts, advocating for a new Title IX policy that really supports survivors, puts them first, and endorsing bills that really improves campus safety.
When we have survivors and you're dealing with them, what are some of the support alternatives that are directly available to them if they've had to endure the worst on campus?
Absolutely. So whenever we have students that come to us, we try to be mindful of the fact that every student survivor's experience with campus sexual assault is not the same. Student survivors are not a monolithic, and everyone has their own individual and unique needs needed to help them within their survivorship journey. And so we try to support them in every step of their survivorship journey, whether that's connecting them with mental health resources, connecting them with legal assistance networks, or also engaging them in some of our programs like our Student Survivor Caucus and also, our speaker series program, which also aims to help provide more of that training and community building. So there's a number of different ways that we like to make sure that we're engaging with those students, especially those who are coming from this historically marginalized student survivors in those spaces.
And when we talk about the spaces, obviously you're dealing in a sacred space, right? And that's a sacred space of the person that has been the victim and the survivor, and really navigating them through a process that can be long and can be arduous. Talk to us about that space and, and how you provide really that comfort in that space, because it's a huge space to be able to talk to an attorney, to go through the legal process. It's a lot, especially if you're on campus and this isn't what I went to school for. This is what I'm thinking is going to occur. But now I find myself in the middle of something where I really have to, go legal.
Absolutely. So I mentioned our Student Survivor Caucus and our Speaker Series programs. Particularly with our Student Survivor Caucus program, we bring together and empower student survivors across the country to receive training, advocacy, policy, and prevention education, and really, again, centering the margins framework as part of that access. And so with the Student Survivor Caucus, built on 3 pillars, we focus on survivorship and wellness, sexual assault awareness and education, and then, of course, social and political activism. And really what the aim is to bring together these student survivors to strengthen their leadership and advocacy skills, build community, and create action plans that they can implement on their campus or in their local communities. In fact, last year, our inaugural class, which included about 15 survivors across 14 states, designed a 5-point platform that really laid out improvements colleges and universities can make to address and prevent sexual assault on their campuses. And then this year, our class created a wellness journal, which is really one that I'm very proud of. And it's meant to be just deconstructed and customized by a survivor to fit their survivorship journey needs. And then again, our speaker series, which assembles 4 innovative grassroots activists in the campus and anti-sexual violence movement spaces to provide that training and education, really getting to the root causes of sexual violence that can be traced back to that systemic and structural discrimination, especially against marginalized and intersecting identities.
Yeah, how does a campus go about that prevention aspect? What can we see in the life of whether it's faculty or students? Because there has to be some heightened awareness that goes on in the work that you do. So how do you go about creating that on a campus atmosphere?
So what we do, we work with a campus, specifically one-on-one, to understand what their needs are, what's happening within their campus. Also speaking with a number of different students, survivors, and advocates to really learn and listen from those who are disproportionately affected by it. And then, of course, engaging with the campus administration and staff to understand from their perspective what's happening, and then building out customized trainings and educational programs through our survivor, our speaker series program, to really create that customized training and educational program built for that campus. Because what we also know is that every campus is different. They have different needs, they have different budgets, they have different number of students who are attending their classroom. And so we try to make things more specific to that campus, but also driving home those preventative, resources and access for students to really come together within the community to create that campus change.
And from your perspective, talk about change. You talked about campus change. Do you see changes happening in terms of for the better on campuses, in terms of conversation, in terms of reduction in numbers? What do you see?
Well, I see that now, if forevermore, we've been having more conversations and providing that educational awareness to campuses more than we ever have been before. We have seen student survivors, especially, coming forward a lot more to be that voice, especially on their respective campuses. Sometimes, not what they choose to be, but they want to be that change on their campus. And so we are seeing a lot more of students coming together, protesting, banding together like never before, and protesting on their campuses to say, hey, change has to come. We can't keep continuing on in these ways. In fact, along with our partners, at It's On Us and Know Your Nine and the National Women's Law Center, we've held our Ed Act Now campaign, which really was instrumental in mobilizing students, parents, even lawyers, to petition the Department of Education to reverse the Title IX rules, which we were able to garner over 55,000 signatures from students across the United States. And so really it's around, making sure that student survivors who are really at the center and the heart of this movement, their voices are being heard, and that we're listening and taking direction from them in order to move the needle.
What would you give, before we go, some advice as far as to those who are survivors? What word of comfort or what word of assurance would you give them to let them know that if they find themselves in that place, that they're not alone?
Well, it's exactly that. So for anyone who's a survivor out there, please know that there's a community of folks who are ready and willing to believe you, support you, and provide you with anything that you need as you're dealing with your survivorship journey. Your experience is valid. It is not your fault, and you are not alone in this. And that if there are anyone out there who are looking for resources, they can definitely go to our website at nrapeoncampus.org/survivor-resources. And there's a number of different resources that we can connect you with. And just know that whatever your healing process is, it should be respected and honored by those around you. And we're here to be there and to be of support.
Yeah, Kenyora Parham, thank you so much for being with us and sharing. She is the executive director of End Rape on Campus. If people want to get in touch with you, how do they go about doing that?
They can definitely go to our website at nrapeoncampus.org and on our contact page, and we'll be sure to respond to them in a timely fashion.
All righty. Thanks much, and we appreciate having you.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
All righty.